I found the image on a forum I visited once out of boredom at 3 in the morning. It was a small thumbnail between threads about lost pets and stupid horror challenges. I clicked because my thumbs do things my brain does not authorize at that hour. The thumbnail popped larger until the screen filled with teeth and a face that was not a face and a light that seemed to come from inside a chest. At first, it felt like a prank image someone had painted for shock value, but then something in my gut tightened like a vice, and I noticed details I could not unsee. The dog looked like a photograph stretched around a grin that belonged to a human. The eyes were wet and unreadable, and the room behind it was lit in the wrong color for any normal bulb. I felt ridiculous for being unsettled and went to close the tab, but my hand hovered and the hair on my arms rose. A small caption read, "Save it," and I did because I am never brave, and I will always obey the tiny instructions that feel like a dare. After I saved it, I slept badly and woke with a taste of metal at the back of my tongue and an ache like teeth aching from the inside. I thought it was coincidence until that night the first email arrived. The subject line was a single word "smile," and the attachment was the same file I had saved. The message had no sender, just an address that resolved to nothing when I traced it. I told myself again that it was an elaborate joke and deleted it and then pulled the file back from my trash because deletion felt like a failure and curiosity is a kind of hunger. I forwarded the image to 2 friends with a stupid caption to bait them into the chat. They laughed with those little text smiles and sent it on to 2 others. The forwarding chain looked like harmless viral garbage until the 3rd friend stopped replying. She was usually verbose and sarcastic, and after she got the image, she sent a single message that read, "Why would you send that?" and then nothing. Her last active status on the messenger froze, and when I called her phone, went straight to a recorded operator voice saying the number was not in service. I thought about guilt. The idea that a picture could corrupt someone is irrational, but the guilt fits like a glove when you imagine yourself as the source of harm. I hated myself, and I also wanted to know what had happened, so I went to her apartment. Her door was unlocked, and the apartment smelled faintly of bleach and cigarettes. She was slumped on the couch with her hands wrapped around her head and her lips moving like someone trying to force an explanation into air. She blinked when I touched her, and her eyes were rimmed raw. She whispered it gave me the memory of the noise, and then she vomited onto the rug. On the coffee table, her laptop was open, and the image was on the screen. She mouthed smile like she had been rehearsing that one word into herself until it had no meaning left but collapse. She refused to answer questions coherently, and the only sound that came out when she tried was a garbled mimic of a laugh that made my teeth ache. I carried her to the hospital because I am a coward who prefers institutions to mysteries. Doctors ran tests and asked about drugs. She had none in her system and no signs of physical trauma. They said stress reaction and placed her on a psychiatric hold. I thought then the internet was what had done this, and I started to research in a way that made me feel like a detective hunting a predator that runs on pixels. I dug through threads and paste bins and old archived boards until my eyes burned. The earliest mentions I found referred to a file called smile.jpg and a short story posted on a creepypasta archive. The tale framed the image as a mimetic vector that forced anyone who saw it to spread it or face waking nightmares that escalated until something physical broke inside them. People talked about bad dreams that insisted on repeating the same room where a dog smiled at them from the doorway. Photos surfaced that claimed to be originals, but each was clearly an edit or a repost. The narrative around the image had accreted layers like barnacles one over the other. Someone claimed it originated from a forgotten web forum where people posted photos of found animals. Another source insisted it came from a private email chain. No one could find a camera negative or a credited photographer. The more I read, the more the story slid its teeth into me. and I started to notice similarities. In nightmares I had as a child, and the way my mother's old dog would sit and watch me while she slept. The dreams started mild. I would wake with the image in my head and the sense that I had been staring through a window into another room. Then at night, I began to dream the room itself. It had a single window like the image, and a curtain that shone orange with light that did not match any sunlight I had ever seen. The dog stood in the doorway every time and watched until I woke. Each night, it moved closer by a pace I could measure if I kept a notebook. I started to keep a notebook because numbers make people feel in control. Page after page became a record of a closed distance. With each entry, I felt the hair along my arms stiffen even in daylight. I stopped sleeping without a light on, and the light made the bedroom feel like an interrogation room. At work, I smiled at people, and the muscles would not cooperate as they used to. Once, in the middle of a staff meeting, my boss asked if I was unwell because my face looked wrong. I touched my mouth, and for a moment, my fingers brushed something like rawness where skin should be. I could not tell if it was psychosomatic or if the image had started to rewrite small parts of my perception, like a corrupt file corrupting a video. My phone updated overnight with messages I had not sent. There were pictures of empty spaces in my apartment and a low-resolution capture of my hallway taken from the wrong end. I began to imagine that something was practicing its angles in my life, the way a child traces a drawing. I told myself to stop interacting with anything connected to the image, and I did not open links, and I did not load attachments. The restraint felt like a fragile promise, and every time I cracked it, I tasted iron. One night I woke because I felt heat at my feet. The blanket was tucked tight, and the temperature device on the wall read normal. When I looked down, the dog was at the foot of my bed in a blurred slice of perspective that could have been a dream. Its grin filled my floor, and the fur along its back rose like an ugly crown. It did not move its mouth, but sound came from somewhere behind my teeth, a chorus of whispers that were not words at first, and then settled into a single imperative that vibrated through bone. Send it on. Send it on. The instruction was not a threat so much as a pressure applied to the soft part of a wound. I obeyed because fear can bend the most defiant will. I copied the file into an email and addressed it to strangers at random, to addresses I had scraped from old public posts. I added a line that said, "You need to see this for context," and something in my hand felt like an instrument finishing a job. Thank you for tuning in. Please leave a like and subscribe. I will see you again next week.